Hi, how are you? My name's Roberta Colosino, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator here in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. Tonight, I'm bringing you some flowers and some butterflies because I'm feeling like it's spring, maybe even summer. And we started filling up our pool today, and it was 70-something today, which wasn't bad, but it's still going down into the 50s tonight. It's not feeling like summer, but I'm feeling like summer. So, butterflies and flowers. Hi, Mimi. How are you? Where are you watching from, Mimi? Thanks for joining me again. So I'll put the camera down and we'll kind of get going. And I've got 3 cards for you tonight. And like I said, the theme is flowers and butterflies tonight. All right, so hang on just a second. Okay. I feel like I have to play with this every single week to get it quite the way I wanted it to be, or where I want it to be, I should say. Hang on just a second. It would be nice if I had a separate phone that I could just leave in here all the time and then I wouldn't have to do this. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I'm not here yet. You can probably see me, but I can't see me yet. Oh, nothing's happening. That's... All right, it's not a good sign. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's kind of strange. All right, I was just in a different place than I usually am. All right, no matter. So it is still June, and this is my host code for June. So if you're placing an order, please use this host code when you do that. And, ooh, sorry, I interrupted myself. Mimi is traveling up the mountains in Northern California. That sounds wonderful. Is there snow up there this time of year? So anyway, use this host code if you're placing an order. And also, don't use the host code if your order happens to be over $150 before tax and shipping, because then you're going to want those rewards for yourself. And if you have any questions about those, please reach out to me before placing your order, and I'll help you or answer any questions that you might have. All right, so the first card we're going to do is kind of going to look familiar. So first I'm going to show you the card that I made just last week. And that is this card, which I made with the Simply Zinnia stamp set, which is part of the Flowering Zinnias suite. And I made this just to kind of show how a simple card can be very pretty. It's just white paper, just a white card base, and there's a little black cat here and there. I know who that belongs to. It's a white card base with crumb cake ink, and then I just used the the basic gray for the sentiment, and put a little bow and linen thread. And I was a little bit surprised at the response that I got, how many people thought this card was pretty, and several people said they would even like to make it in next week's Coffee and a Card. So I thought that was really kind of nice. So what I'm going to do is just kind of show you, you know how sometimes when I do these videos I talk to you about beginner crafters, casual crafters, you might call those sort of intermediate crafters, and then advanced crafters, or what we call avid crafters. So this would definitely be a beginner crafter, or also what we call a stamp, ink, and paper, or a SIP card. So you don't have to have die cut machines, or you don't have to have embossing folders or anything to make this card. All you really need is ink and stamps and some glue, all right, and maybe some type of twine, but that wasn't necessary. So I'm just going to really quickly show you how you could take this same exact card to the next level, and I'm thinking this might be what I'll do with it in next week's Coffee and a Card. So I've got a basic white card base, just like the one we used before, only what I have done is I have taken the 3D embossing folder from this set. Yeah, there we go. Okay, you can see it. It still doesn't do it justice because we're getting some shadowing. So this is the Simply Zinnia stamp set, and the suite comes with some dies, and these are the dies. The suite comes with the embossing folder, and there's the embossing folder. And if you get the entire suite, you also get the paper, which I showed you last week. It's absolutely gorgeous, the paper is. So I use the embossing folder. It's also, I should point out, one of our bigger folders. We actually have some now that are even larger than this, but this is a 6x6. So if you're a person who makes mini albums or things like that, or does mixed media art or anything to that effect, then things like this are really nice for that as well. Now, typically, when I have an embossing folder, I want to do something with blending brushes or watercolor to add color to this. But in this case, we're just going with that white on white. So I've got a basic card base, which is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And I did not use my bone folder, and so things are a little bit crooked. I just folded it in half, and sometimes that doesn't work. There we go. Let's get that out of the way. And I'm just going to glue this down, and this is also 4 1/4 by 5.5. So it's the exact same size as the card base. And I'm just going to glue that on, if I can find my glue. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, who doesn't remember to get their glue out? All right. And we have what you call the embossed side, which is the side where the pattern sort of pops up. And then you have what you call the debossed side, where it sort of goes in. And I like both of them. On some folders, I like one more than the other. I almost think on this one, I may like the debossed side more. So it seems to show up more, so I'm going to go with that. Now, because there's the texture associated with this, from being embossed, I want to make sure to get enough glue on here. You could certainly choose to use your tear and tape or even your Stamp and Seal Plus. I have not used Stamp and Seal that much to know how strong it is for something like this. I tend to like the Stamp and Seal Plus, and so when I'm using Stamp and Seal as opposed to glue, I use that. And I really haven't bothered with the Stamp and Seal, to be honest with you. So, and it's hard for me to see because everything's white. The glue is white, the paper's white. I hope I have enough on there, but I'll know soon enough. And I just kind of go like that with it, like you were stacking some papers and want them to be even. And then I'm going to give it a good press. Just to make sure that it's down. Okay, so now what's going to be different from this card and the other card is that with the other card I stamped directly on the card front. Well, you can't stamp on this, obviously, so I'm going to need another layer. And I want to see more of that background, but I wanted to see first how large that stamp really was and kind of get an idea for that. And I'm also thinking that for this card, maybe I might change my mind. I'm thinking that I might stamp right on here, but then I don't know because I want to cover up, you know, where the stems fall. So maybe not. But it's a pretty large stamp. So as you can see, if I put it down here, it's going to take up a big chunk of this paper. So I'm going to want to stamp it close to the top is what I'm thinking. All right, another thing that I sometimes do when the stamp is large like this is I bring the pad to the stamp. I can move it around more and I seem to get a better feeling for whether it's getting well inked or not. I don't recall re-inking this pad recently, so I wanted to make sure I really got it. And then, to be honest, I don't even have to worry about how straight this is because if it's a little cocked to one side or the other, I don't think I'm going to care. It'll just look natural either way. So with a big stamp like this, I do like to leave the stamp down for a couple of seconds. Make sure you're not moving the stamp, but hold it down with one hand, give it a good rub with the other hand, and just give that ink time to soak in. I'm not pressing hard, I'm not doing CPR or anything like that. I just want to make sure that it has time for the ink to soak in, and that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that, no problem there. And then again, I think that if I don't put the sentiment on a separate strip, that's just not going to look right because of the Yeah, because of the stems. The flowers look like they're floating in air. That's what I'm trying to say. Not succeeding very well. And on the other card, I did stamp in the basic gray, which I actually have out here for another card. I didn't think of that, so hang on while I dig it out, because that's going to be on card number 3, I think. Okay, gee, and I thought I was so well organized. There we go. So the basic gray, it's one of my favorite colors for stamping sentiments when I'm not using a color. It's almost like my go-to, almost a substitute for black. Many times, not all the time, but sometimes it's a substitute for black for me. All right, so we're going to stamp. I'm going to use the same sentiment just because I really want to kind of drive home the point that it's almost the same card, but with the only exception being the embossing folder and the embossed area. Okay, I also just like the way that gray stamps for some reason. It just, I don't know, it comes out looking really good. That's all I can say about that, is that it comes out looking really good. Okay, I think I put my thumb in it, and then I went ahead and made a little bow out of the linen thread, because whenever I make bows on camera, I don't know, bad things happen. So I'm going to trim this up, and I'm going to use the little mini trimmer. Unfortunately, although we keep trying to get Stampin' Up! To make another one of these, this was offered, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, maybe more, as a joining bonus when people signed up to be a new demonstrator. And demonstrators, current demonstrators, were also allowed to purchase it, but it was never made public. It was never made available to general customers, which is kind of sad, because every time I use it in a class or somebody sees it, they want it. There are some similar ones on Amazon, and there's one that was recommended, and I'm going to try to get the information on that one in particular, because I'd rather recommend one that someone's actually used and is happy with. This one is just really, really nice. It gives a nice clean cut, and it lets you really cut off even just the smallest sliver if you want to. And I like that, because sometimes, like right now, I want to get this kind of close. And it has the blade guard, and when you hold that down, it keeps the paper from moving, which is also nice, because there's nothing worse than when your paper shifts just as you're about to cut it. Okay, and then I need some dimensionals to pop that up. But before I actually peel the backings off of them, what I want to do next is to do a little test on where this is going to sit, because I still want to trim that, because I want to see more. I mean, I went to the trouble to do this really beautiful embossing, and it would be a shame if people couldn't see it back there. So I know that I want to trim off some more. This, I want to cover that. So I could probably trim off a good, maybe not up here at the top, but a good ½ inch all the way around, and maybe just a tiny bit off the top, or maybe nothing off the top. I don't know. We'll see. So that's about a ½ inch. And it still gives me room. I don't think I'd want to cut off any more than that. And then maybe not a ½ inch on this side. Maybe more like a ¼ inch here. And maybe about a ¼ inch here. Now this I'm eyeballing, just so you know. There is no measurement there that I can actually see. I'm just guessing. And then maybe just a touch from here. Okay. Oop. Let's see how that looks. For some reason I feel like that's crooked. Sometimes I don't remember to straighten it out and make sure it's really butted up against the top. Yeah, I think that was a little crooked. All right. So now we're going to come back in with our image. And, okay, I had a thought, but I've already talked myself out of it, so. All right, so I want to make sure I get quite a lot of glue in the corners. I want to make sure this is really stuffed down. I know, I really hate when I look at a card and I see the corners popping up. That just always aggravates me when I've done that, so Want to make sure the corners stay down. Take your bone folder. Obviously don't press too hard because you don't want to flatten out your embossing. Now I can go ahead and take the backing off of this. I really like this sentiment because sometimes, you know, depending on what somebody has done for you, if they do something really kind of special and out there for you, thank you doesn't seem quite like enough. You know, every once in a while you need something a little bit more than thank you. So I like this one. All right, and a glue dot is what always works for bows for me. They're very sticky. I just kind of roll them up a little bit so that you can't see them from behind into kind of a little log. They're very sticky and they work very well. I know sometimes it looks like they might not work because they're so small, but they're really very strong. And then I know that the tails will kind of hang down a little bit over the words, but I don't think it's going to prevent anybody from reading the words. So I'm not too concerned about that. And so there we have pretty much the same card, but with just one exception, and that is the embossing folder. So when you take a look at how that really just kind of kicks the card up a notch, that's really nice. So I like that, and it certainly is very simple. It would certainly make a very beautiful sympathy card, simple, whatever, but I would use it for a birthday card. I would use it for really almost anything. It's just so pretty. All right, so that's that. That's card number 1. Card number 2 is something that I did yesterday in my Coffee and a Card. However, this was one that I had made a while ago, and I liked it because I like this color a lot. I keep wanting to say Rich Razzleberry, but that's the color that retired. This one is Blackberry Bliss. I do like that color, but I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. So I brought this to the class and I said to them, okay, but you're not making it in this color. And I think actually some of the people looked relieved. We made the same card in Highland Heather. I know that I have some purple ladies in my classes that really enjoy Highland Heather. So this card, I didn't write it down, so I don't know if I'm going to remember it. This card has a name. Sometimes I make up names for cards because I don't know what the name is, but this one does have a name. It's called a Diagonal Joyfold card. And I'm not sure if Joyfold refers to or was somebody's fun way of saying funfold. If there's a different kind of a Joyfold that isn't diagonal, I can't tell you. All right, I don't know how you would do this exactly if it wasn't. So the way this card works, I kind of call it a card within a card. So you open this flap here, and then you open this flap, and this is really your card, so to speak. So this is where your picture is, your focal point. This is where one of your sentiments are, and then on the inside, depending on what it is, there could be another sentiment. I put just a partial flower so it wouldn't take up too much room, and this is where you would write your message to the person. Now, I have seen these cards made where this same designer series paper that's here is also here. And I just felt like that was too much, so I left mine blank. You don't have to do that. I've also seen them where the designer series paper covers this whole piece here, the backing piece. And then you've got, I don't know, it's just all over the place. And for me, it's too much for the eye to look at. So I took the strip that was left over, because this is 6x6 paper. I took the strip that was left over and just used that to put a strip down here. How you make it, when and if you make this card is entirely up to you. And I do have the dimensions here for you to see so that you can write those down or take a screenshot or whatever you'd like to do. So just for the sentiment and for this one flower, I use the Hooray for Surprises bundle, which also comes with these dies. And I've made 1 or 2 cards, I think maybe when I was in Florida. Hello, Amy. Thanks for joining. This card, or these dies, make kind of an interactive card. So these little things, you notice they have these little tabs here, this little half circle here and here. There's a way that you, and I don't think you'll ever be able to see this, but these dies are etched a little bit, if that's the word, going around, so that it doesn't cut through in every single place. So it's almost like it makes it perforated. So you can put a message underneath on the card base and then put this on top of it maybe, and you can peel it back to see the message. All right, but once you peel it back, then it kind of rips off, and then you can't put it back. So it's kind of cute. It's interesting. It would be great. It's certainly not meant to be just a Valentine's card. And this one here is the same way. It's perforated, but it makes a long line so that, let's say for this sentiment, you are simply amazing. They look at the card, and it literally says, peel here. There's a stamp. Oh, there's a stamp here that says pull. And you stamp that on the little tab, and then the person knows to pull it to reveal the sentiment. It's just kind of cute and kind of different. But I like this flower a lot. Now, some people say this is a poinsettia. I don't know. I'm just saying it's a flower because I like the flower because it's big, and the other flowers that I had I didn't want to use, and this one has solid colors, whereas the others needed to be colored. So maybe I was just being lazy, but whatever. Okay, so I decided to use that. And I think what did I use on the other one? On this one, I used You're the Best. That's kind of that's kind of a nice thing to say to somebody. And it could even go on a graduation card, You're the Best, and then inside some comment about how they did in school or whatever. All right. And so this one I'm doing in Balmy Blue, mainly because I've already run out of the Highland Heather paper in this set. So Stampin' Up! Has a 6x6 pad for all of, it's not a pad, a pack, for all of the color families. So the subtle color family is Balmy Blue, Bubble Bath, Calypso Coral, Fresh Freesia, Highland Heather, Lemon Lolly, Lost Lagoon, Petal Pink, Pool Party, and Soft Seafoam. And I believe there are 40 pieces of paper in here, but you only get 4 of each color, but only 2 of the same design. So for my class yesterday, I had to use all of the Highland Heather. So that's gone now. That's the only disadvantage to those pads, is that if you're making multiples of something, you're going to run out kind of quickly. All right, so Diagonal Joy Fold card is what it's called. And this card base is just your typical, your typical card base. It is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and so that's written down here too, so that you can take a screenshot of that. I'm going to try to see if I can keep all of this stuff so that it's kind of screenshotable. This is going to be the piece that goes here, and it's too long, but I glue it on and then I just trim it off. But it will be, when I'm done, 4 by 2. All right, so that's for the front. The other thing that's kind of neat to know about our paper is that the designer series paper, except for a few of the specialty papers, are all double-sided. So maybe you're really all about stripes, or maybe you're giving this card to a guy and you don't think he's going to appreciate the flowers and greenery. Flip it over and see what's on the other side. You could also mix and match. So maybe this one, which goes on the inside, could be this way up, and maybe this one that goes on the front could be this way. You know, whatever you like to do is fine. So this is 4 by 5 1/4, which is a typical front card layer. All right, this bigger one is for the inside of the card. That's where I said you would write your sentiment, and that is 3 3/4 by 2 3/4. This one is for the front, where you're going to put your focal point and possibly a sentiment, and that is 3.5 by 2.5. And then this one is for what I call the inside card, the card within a card, and this is 8 by 3, scored at 4 inches. All right, so let's see. I think you could take a screenshot of those, and this is just a leftover piece that I didn't know if I would really do anything with, but I just kind of kept it with everything else, just in case. Okay, so you've got time to take a screenshot if you want. Let me lay that down flat. I've got my ceiling fan on, so things are blowing. We actually got some warm weather today. It's kind of nice. Okay. All right, so let's get started. The first thing that you can do, the easiest thing to do, is to just go right ahead and glue this on the inside. You could do that, or you could do the cutting. Why don't we do the cutting first, just so you can see that. So I don't know if you can see those or not, but I made tiny little pencil marks right here where this finger is. Yeah, okay, I just caught sight of it, but now I don't know where it went. So I made a tiny little pencil mark right here and a tiny little pencil mark right here at the bottom. Okay, so what we want to do, hang on, let me get these out of the way so that I can get that in camera, is we're going to cut the top portion of the card off on a diagonal. So I'm going to make sure that I have the front facing here. I'm going to turn it. I guess it doesn't really matter whether I cut from the inside or the outside. What I want to do is make sure that the point here is right here in the cutting groove, in the channel. But then I'm going to need to manipulate this part because I want to cut just on this side of the score line, because I don't want to cut into that score line. So I want to keep looking and make sure that this is still in the channel and that this is still in the channel. And you kind of have to keep wiggling and manipulating a little bit to make sure that they're both where you want them to be. Don't cut from the bottom up, because if you hit that little tiny point, you just might crush it. So for something like this, you want to make sure that you cut from the top down. And there you go. This part you can certainly save. It's a good enough size scrap to use for something. And if your pencil line is showing, don't worry about that either. I use this Pentel Professional, or Helix. I'm sorry, sometimes I use Pentel. I think they're the same. But it's a, oh my gosh, what do you call it? See, the Pentel says what it is. It's a polymer. That's it. It's a polymer eraser, and it erases pencil beautifully without any trace, as long as you haven't pressed really hard and like made an indent. Okay, so now I'm the tiniest bit off here because there's just a little bit here. I'm not sure that matters at all, but we're going to kind of keep an eye on it, okay? I really don't think it's going to make a difference. So let's burnish this down so it stays put. And now we can go ahead and glue this piece on the inside. And I do like this pattern, so I'm going to use this. Again, I get a fair amount in the corners, but not enough that it's going to come squishing out when I push it down. The other thing, I always tell people I like using the fine tip glue pen. I use our Tombow Mono glue and I replace it and put it in these. It saves a lot of waste on glue and saves a lot of mess on glue, but you still need to keep it moving. So in other words, if you squeeze and just hold it in one spot, you're going to get a glob. And what happens with globs, depending on the paper, our paper is pretty thick, so it's not a big issue for if you're using Stampin' Up! Paper, but you will literally see a bump under what you're gluing down if you've left a big glob of glue. So you don't want to do that. All right, so I'm just going to press that down. Again, you can use your bone folder and go out towards the corners just to make sure that they're down. So now we can set that aside for a couple of minutes, and the small one is the one that goes on the front, so I'm going to focus on that one first. And I've got my Balmy Blue ink pad. And, oh, look what I did. I forgot to mount my stamps. I did all the others and forgot these. Okay, so I'm going to take out the big flower stamp. And maybe this time I'll use Sending Lots of Love. It's not one that I use that often, and because of that, I tend not to make too many of them. But I think that might be a nice one to have for certain people. That will be just big enough, no problem there, and then I don't need that one. And then this should be big enough. So another thing that I say in my classes, and if you've never heard me say it, when you're using the acrylic blocks, try to use a block that's very close in size to your stamp. Because if you were to put a tiny little flower in the middle of this stamp set, or this block rather, you sometimes get ink around your edges, and then especially if you're one of those people who rocks when you stamp, which you kind of shouldn't do, but if you do, then what can happen is you can get gunky ink on your whatever you're stamping. Gunky ink, that's an official term. All right, so this is a photopolymer stamp, so we like to put something underneath it. You can use our Stampin' Pierce mat, you can use an old mouse pad. I just have some kids' craft foam, and I cut these up and use them for classes, because I want everybody to have their own. So this is going to be a whole different card than the one that I made using the Blackberry Bliss. It's going to be so much lighter. Balmy Blue is so light. You know what, actually, I should probably put the flower on first. Balmy Blue is going to be very light. I also don't know if I've inked this one up recently. Hang on one second. I feel like I'm not getting much color. So then I can show you something else that I did recently. I would go nuts when I went into the drawer where I keep my reinkers, picking up every one to look at it. So I used a, what is it, an 1/8 of an inch hole punch to punch out little pieces of the cardstock, because you know about our color coordination. So the cardstock matches the ink, matches the DSP, matches the markers, matches the pencils, and so on. So that I could find these much faster. So I picked that up. All right, that's Pool Party. I was warm. I was in the right neighborhood. And here you go, that's Balmy Blue. So instead of picking up 7 or 8 or 10 of those things trying to find it, I only had to pick up 1 or 2 to find the one I wanted. So to re-ink our pads, I gave that a shake. I have no idea if you really need to shake it or not. Some people gently go over the ink pad like they're scribbling on it. You just don't want to press the tip of the re-inker into it. Now, this pad is not too dry, and I can tell because the ink's not just like soaking right in. If the ink pad is super dry, the ink disappears almost immediately, but it's definitely soaking in. If your ink pad is already very juicy and you start to re-ink it, it's just going to sit there on the top and look at you, so just stop and don't do it. All right, so we do that. That should be plenty. And then I keep these little tasting spoons that I've gotten. You know, when I go to ice cream places, they look at me like I'm kind of funny because they're sitting there waiting for me to hand them the tasting spoon when I'm done, and instead I wipe it off with a napkin and stick it in my purse. But because I use them for this kind of thing, they're perfect for that. It's like a little spatula, you know? So yeah, some people think I'm a little wackadoo, but that's all right. I can live with it. All right, so now I feel a little bit better about that. I think that's inked up a little bit better. And we're going to try this again. It's still going to be pale, but I just felt like I wasn't seeing, yeah, there we go. I wasn't even seeing ink on the stamp, so that concerned me a little bit. All right, there's no right or wrong direction for this. So I'm going to press it down, and I do like to hold it, especially with the photopolymer stamps. Just give the paper time to soak in, because sometimes the ink beads up on the photopolymer stamps. There we go. Oh, I like that. Now that looks dark. It will lighten a little bit as it dries. Okay, the other thing with photopolymer stamps, and I've used these a lot, we used them in class yesterday, but I'll just show you in case you've never seen my spiel before. There seems to be a belief, nothing official has ever been said by Stampin' Up, but there seems to be a belief that the photopolymer stamps have some kind of a coating on them when they come out of the manufacturing process. So I saw another demonstrator, someone from Australia a few years ago. She would ink it up and then just kind of smush it off on a piece of paper, ink it up and smush it off. And she'd do that 3 or 4 times. And then she would get out her, you know, her Stampin' Chamois. And then she'd clean it off. And then she would go ahead and she would start stamping. And she found that she got a much cleaner stamp. And then maybe stamp it off on a piece of paper again, too, just to make sure it's dry. Because the Stampin' Chamois, you wash those with water, and they do have some water in them. All right, so now we'll try this. And we'll see if I can get it straight. When you're stamping, you should truly stamp standing up. Or at least you would normally pull it down, like right in front of you. But if I do that, you can't see what the heck I'm doing, right? So I try to keep it so that you can see. If I stand up, sometimes I knock my camera, and that's not good. So I do my best to get it straight, but your head should really be right over it when you're stamping. It just works best. And that is like, oh my gosh, that's almost perfect. Almost perfect. I don't know how I did that. Okay. So now we've got our top part, our focal piece, and that's going to be on the top of our mini card. I guess I just call it the mini card or the inside card. I want to get those ends lined up and get that burnished down. And I don't think I used dimensionals on this card. All right, but I don't want to put that down yet because I want to put this down first. So for me, even though I know this is supposed to be 4 inches long, it's just easier for me, again, this is just me, to go ahead and glue this. I'm not going to put glue down here because I know I'm not going to get that far. I'm going to put glue on the upper half, and then what I'll do is I'll put some glue down here on the bottom just in case I didn't glue far enough down. And then I'm just going to put this on. I want to get it kind of dead center. I'm not pressing it down yet because I'm going to hold it up and look at it and make sure that I'm happy with it being centered. Then I'm going to press it down. Then I'm going to open it up and turn it backwards, turn it around, and I'm going to use my paper snips. And because I turned it backwards, I can use the bottom piece of the cardstock and follow that line, and I've got a perfectly clean cut. To me, that's just easier. You do not have to do it that way. That's just me. That's what I do. All right. You could also, if you wanted to, stamp whatever you're stamping into something that's been die cut that might have like a shape to it, whether it's a circle or a rectangle or a square. I don't think it really matters as long as it fits within the parameters of this card. Okay. I just chose to leave mine just a regular rectangle. So now we're going to try to center that side to side and top to bottom. All right, and then I need a piece of scrap paper because I'm just going to take that same stamp. I'm looking because I already lost the Balmy Blue ink pad, but that's because I actually put it back where it belonged. I'm not used to doing that, so I wasn't even thinking. And I'll go ahead and ink it all up just because I'm not sure where I'm going to end up. But I'm just going to purposely stamp it partially off one corner. It could be the left, the right, the top, the bottom, whatever. I figure this is a fairly small area, so I want to leave room to actually write a message in case I want to. But it just keeps the inside from being kind of dull. All right, so that's going to get glued on the inside. Because I'm touching white paper, I'm looking at my hands because there's nothing worse than picking something up and then seeing a blue or red or whatever fingerprint stuck on there and realizing that you've just ruined your card that you've been working on for 10 minutes or whatever. So I think you can see, and I had some people who were almost beginners yesterday, or at least one person who was kind of a beginner yesterday, I think made this card. And then I have, the people in my classes who are always sure that it's too hard, they can't do it. And then they're very pleasantly surprised when it's really not that hard. And in Coffee and a Card, which is a little different from a regular class, I do a lot of the prep work for them. So they didn't even have to worry about cutting that diagonal. But I already told you that I don't think I cut mine perfectly, and it's just not going to matter. So now here's the part where you could goof it up if you're not paying attention. All right, your card has to get glued to the inside so that it's as close to the center as possible, but I don't think it can be totally centered top to bottom, because if it was, well, it can be close, but you want to make sure you can close that card without denting the card. So probably what I'm going to do is just center it from side to side and then come up. Sorry, there's just something on this card that's making me crazy. Okay. Center it from side to side and then come up a tiny bit. No one will notice. What is this schmutz? Okay. And then I want to make sure that I can close my card. And it looks like I can. There's a couple of ways to do this. One way, if you think you can really hang on to it, is to flip it over and keep it in that same position. And then I'm going to put the glue on. And as long as the glue is still wet, and this glue does dry pretty quickly, but as long as it's still wet, if I'm not doing this quite right, I'm going to put it down, I'm going to open it up, and now I'm going to look at it. And at this point, if it's crooked, I can fix it because the glue is still damp. Okay? So there we go. a card within a card. And I think the last time I made this, I called it a card within a card. I think there's a couple of different cards that I call that because I had never heard this joyfold thing before. But that's apparently what it's being called, is a diagonal joyfold card. So I'm more than happy to call it that too. And, you know, really look at these two cards. They're so, so different. And if you just were not a fan of dark colors and you looked at this card, you might think, well, I don't want to make that card. But then you look at this one or the purple one and you say, oh, I want to make that card. So that's why I decided to show you a different color. All right, so that's card number 2. Card number 3, I said flowers and butterflies, and I wasn't kidding. And then, you know what, I forgot to show you. All right, I'll take one off and show you because you might not have noticed. I haven't worn earrings this big since 1970-something, and I kid you not. I found these at a thrift store. They're pretty big loops. That's got to be like 2 inches, right? But they have butterflies in them, so I decided to wear them tonight since I was making a butterfly card. I have dragonfly earrings for when I make a dragonfly card. I have teapot earrings. I have garlic earrings, and so far Stampin' Up! Has not come up with a garlic stamp that I know of. But I do have garlic earrings. I bought those at the Gilroy Garlic Festival in California. Mimi, is that someplace you might be familiar with? It was just we saw the sign, and I basically screamed to my husband to slam on the brakes, and he almost killed us because he thought I saw something that I didn't see, because I saw the billboard and said Gilroy Garlic Festival like 12 miles ahead or whatever, and I'm like, we have to go. We have to go to that. I had garlic ice cream. It was so good. All right, enough of that. So this is a new set called Sketched Butterflies, and I'm trying to remember if this one came with dies because I couldn't find the dies this morning, so maybe it doesn't. It's hard for me to believe that it doesn't, but I honestly couldn't find them. And I can't remember if this is in the catalog or if this is an online exclusive. I'll have to check. So far, I'm full of good information for you, aren't I? All right, so we are going to use this butterfly and this butterfly, and I think I picked yes, I did. Wishing you a beautiful birthday. All right. And one of my favorite color combinations, or really 2 of them, are pink and gray and pink and black. I don't know why I like them so much. I think it has something to do with that suit that Jackie Kennedy was wearing the day that President Kennedy was shot. That was pink and black, and she was, you know, she's so beautiful, and she was so stoic that day, and anyway, that's what I think of. So Bubble Bath it's not, I don't know if I'd call it a true pink. I feel like I see undertones of light purple or lavender in there, but, you know, whatever. So I decided to do the card with pink and basic gray. So this piece here is for the inside, so that'll go there. And this piece is 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. And this piece is 3 3/4 by 5 because I wanted to see some of that pink. So we could go right ahead and glue this piece down. And I do like this basic gray. It's a nice dark, rich gray. It doesn't have undertones of blue like some grays do. It's just, I love this color. It's just really nice. You know, some grays are brownish, some grays are bluish. I'm actually looking to replace the carpeting in my downstairs with a gray, but I want to be careful. I think this would be too dark. I have 2 cats, and I think cat hair would just stand out on this, and like the whole world would see it. So I'm thinking maybe a lighter gray, but I love this gray. It's so pretty. All right, so we're going to take that and just set it aside for now, and take the inside and set it aside for now. So this piece, the 3 5/8, and I wasn't sure if I was doing anything with that, so I saved it. The 3 5/8 by 4 7/8 is for our focal point. And again, I need scrap paper for this because what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use smoky slate ink because I wanted this to be lighter than that other gray. So with the smoky slate ink, all right, now this is the part we have to pay attention to, and I was afraid I was going to forget it. I want to take the large stamp first. I'm going to do kind of a DIY DSP. You've heard me say that before. So design your own designer series paper. But I'm going to put this one down first. because I do want to work around this. Some people say you should always start with the larger stamp anyway. All right, I like that. I don't think I would have liked the dark gray with this. So now I'm going to take, well, I think I'm still going to use this one, but like this one you'll only see bits and bobs of. So I'm going to take the smaller one now. Okay. And I'm going to stamp a few of those, and I try to remember to turn the stamp around so I'm not always stamping in the same direction. And then I'm going to grab this one, but this time I'm going to have it so it's just kind of coming in from the corner. I didn't get a great stamp there, but I'm going to ignore that because with these stamps, with the red rubber stamps, it's really hard to go back and fix it. You can sometimes with the photopolymer stamps. It's not my strength though, so I try not to need to do it. Okay, so those are kind of coming off. And now I really wish that I had some smaller ones, and there is, well, you know what, there's this, it's a cluster of 4. And here's another, just kind of a little hint for you. I took a black Sharpie marker and I marked right there because for whatever reason I did trim these stamps up so there wasn't so much rubber around the edges, but for some reason my ink kept pooling in that one spot and it was making a mess out of what I was stamping. So I decided to put that black Sharpie mark there so that I would be cautious for that. So I think what I'm going to do, having nothing to do with what I just told you, is that I'm not going to use this whole thing. I think I'm going to have it sort of, well, I don't know. Let me see. Here's my idea is that maybe I'll just ink up this one that's separate up here on the top because that's kind of easy to do. And I'm really going to hope that I don't have any other ink anyplace else. And then stamp that one in some of those spots. Oh, I love it. Okay. All right. I'm glad I decided to do that. And then another one here. They're so pretty and they're so delicate, and again, I don't know how much of this you can really tell from where you're looking, but there's so much detail to them, and again, they're supposed to look kind of like a pencil or possibly even a pen and ink sketch. Okay. You know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to take the small one and I'm going to put that here, but just a touch of it coming on from outside. Then I'm going to go back to this one and get, well, maybe I don't want to put one in there now. I'm going to put one over here. So these are like the hard decisions. You know, you want it to be balanced, but I do find that sometimes I keep fussing with it, and then before I know it, I've done too much and I'm not happy with it. So this one can be coming off a little bit, and I'm going to say stop. I'm going to tell myself to stop. Sometimes I have to do that. Okay, so now what I want to do though, so if we take a look at what we've got so far, we've got that, and I think that's very pretty. I purposely wanted just a little tiny border of the gray and more of the bubble bath pink to show, but I still want some color in there, and I want it to be kind of like a spotlight or a highlight. So if you have these Stampin' Write markers, you can certainly use the Stampin' Write markers because some people have those and don't have the blends, which are alcohol markers. You can buy the set of Stampin' Write markers in all of the new 2023 core colors. So that has all of those 11 new core colors in them. But I'm going to use my blends, and I'm only going to color this one large stamp because that's the one I kind of wanted to focus on. So I'm going to start with my dark, and I'm going to use the bullet tip, and I'm just going to kind of look at some of the different parts to this. So there's this little section here. I'm going to make that darker. I'm not looking at any real butterflies because I'm very sure that well, I shouldn't say that. There are butterflies in some surprising colors, but there probably are no solid pink butterflies. Although I bet if I looked hard enough, I could probably find that there are some in the Amazon or who knows where. So all of these little shaded spots, I'm going to make darker, and I may go back and make them darker yet. And then here we've got this little thing that kind of, and I'm going to go over that a couple of times to make it darker maybe. And this isn't a very dark pink, so when I say dark, it's relative. And then I'm going to take the light bubble bath. So our Stampin' Blend markers come in sets of 2, so you get a light and a dark. All right, and now I'm going to just kind of come out from that dark area, going over it some more. So what happens is that dark area will actually get a tiny bit darker, and some of the dark ink from there will get drawn out. And that's why they call them blends, because you're blending color. Now I could also, when I'm done, well, hang on and I'll show you what I could. If I go out of the lines by mistake, which heavens knows that happens, we have a blend called the Color Lifter, which almost works like an eraser. And it will remove the color from my mistake. But it's not just for mistakes. You can also use it to highlight certain areas, to make it look like light is shining on it, like you would with white paint if you were painting. But you can do it by removing some color. And that's kind of cool too. So don't think of it only as an eraser for mistakes. Okay. I like that kind of just as it is, but if I want to add maybe some more shadow or some more highlights, I could come through, because we've got these little lines in here, I could come through and just very lightly, this sounds funny, very lightly darken some of those up. That sounds a little weird, doesn't it? Sounds like a contradiction, but just, I'm really going very lightly. I'm not even necessarily getting every spot. Just hit some of those lines to make them a tiny bit darker. Some of those little, it's almost like stripes, I guess. Now, isn't that lovely? I think it's lovely. So that just becomes kind of a highlight or a focal point. And I would love to put some Wink of Stella on this, but last week I think my Wink of Stella kind of died in the middle of the video. And then I could add some bling to it. And then my sentiment. Let's not forget my sentiment. So do I want the sentiment to be darker? I think I do. You notice how I ask myself questions and then answer my own questions? I'm very good at that. I like the answers that I get from myself better than some of the answers I might get from other people. That's probably why I do that. All right, so wishing you a beautiful birthday in basic gray. Perfect. I have to tell you that I'm having some seriously good luck tonight with stamping, and that does not always happen. Does not. All right, so let's get this put on here. So again, this layer is 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. I'm just saying it out loud again before I flip it over and I can't see it anymore. All right, so this is a little tricky because I really just want a touch showing. But I do want it to be even all the way around if at all possible. It's just a nice little frame. Oh, I'm really liking this card. I hope that doesn't sound conceited. Sometimes I make a card and I look at it and go, well, yeah, don't really like that. So, I get excited when I like a card. So for the inside white layer, I think I'm just going to put one of these in the smoky slate, but so that the whole thing gets on here. Just keep it simple. Now what I could do is I have this piece of gray. Of course, I probably should have done it sooner, right? I could make a super thin gray lining on the bottom there. That might be kind of cool. It would definitely have to be super thin though. But let's just see. I'll just try it. You know, you can play with stuff and you really can't do any harm, especially because I have not glued that down yet. So I always say stamp before you glue, because if I do this and then I glue it on and everything and I don't like it, I could just flip it over and make another one. Okay, so I do want this to be 4. Yes, 4. And then it's really going to have to be just a sliver because I don't want it to cover up that butterfly. So like, I don't know, a 1/16 of an inch maybe? Maybe that's almost too small to bother with, but I think it might just add just a little something something. Yeah, I think I like that. Okay. So we've got to keep the line very fine here. Yeah, see, in a spot like this, you really couldn't use your tear and tape or your, whatchamacallit, your seal. I do like that. It's certainly nothing fancy or nothing special, but it just adds a little touch. And I think in here, it'll give it like a little border. Oh, I see one side is kind of sticking over, so it was a little bit too long. It's way ahead of time, but I think I'm just going to mention this so that I don't forget too. So July 3rd, I looked at my calendar today. July 3rd is a Wednesday, and I will not be able to come live on that day because every year on July 3rd, for I don't know how many years now, 20 plus years, our family goes out to Canisius Lake, and the family gathers at a family member's house, and we go out on a boat, and we watch fireworks on the lake, and they have a ring of fire around the lake. And it's just a really good time, and I'm not missing that. So I'll probably try to pick another day that same week to come to, but we're also renting a cottage out there, and I'm not sure exactly, well, my son and his wife are renting the cottage, and some of us are staying at different times. I'm also assuming that they're going to want some time to themselves out there, so I want to make sure that I do not overstay my welcome. So I might stay one night, maybe 2, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right, so there is that. My sentiment. I'm not sure that I want to cover all of this up with, I have to think about that. Do I want to punch this out using some punch? But then I'm going to cover up a lot of that, or I could, hang on, let's just see. I'm thinking I could fussy cut. Oh, and I have another idea too, now that I see that sitting there. I'm going to cut it super, super close first and just see how that looks. I don't want to cut off the Y in birthday though, that would be bad. Could just leave it like that, and then maybe, I don't even know if we have any current gray ribbon right now or not. I was thinking ribbon would be nice. I know that I've seen a card like this made, I think it was ribbon, with some ribbon. But what if I just do that? So I'm, yes, I'm still covering up a butterfly. I could put it higher up where I kind of have this spot where there's not a whole lot there. There's nothing that says it has to be on the bottom. It can't be in the middle. So that might actually be okay. I think I like that. Do I want to, hang on. Do I want to use this longer piece and then angle both sides of it instead of just one side? So there. And that's what I wanted to do. So I didn't even need that one little butterfly after all, did I? But I'm glad I did it. Well, you know what? If I put it over a little bit more, it kind of covers up my bad stamping over here. Again, there's no rule that says it has to be centered. I don't think so. If it bothers you, then again, if you make this card, then don't do that. I don't feel an overwhelming need to center it. But I do feel a need to get some dimensionals. Well, and I don't think she's watching tonight, but I know that Elaine would be very happy to make this card in class next month because she's a butterfly girl. She loves butterflies. So there we go. That is card number 3. So, oops, I just caught an avalanche in midair. Okay, so we have card number 1, which is really just a remake of last week's card, but with the embossing folder. Card number 2, which is the diagonal joy fold card. And card number 3. So I hope you like those cards. I'm really happy with all of them, honestly. This one just might be my favorite. I thought this one was going to be, but now I think this one gets my vote. All right, so thank you for watching, whether you're watching now or on the replay. And don't forget that in the month of June, there is a bundle sale. It's only for bundles with stamps and dies. No stamps and punches, but stamps and dies are 10% off. Bundles are always 10% off, so you're actually getting 20% off during this sale. And that's really good price because the bundles are usually priced pretty well to begin with. So think about that one, all right? If you have seen any bundles in the catalog or the online exclusive that you like, this would be the time to get them before this month is over. All right, take care. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in 1 week.